Guys, it's Quana back again with another review. Hope you guys are doing awesome. I just spent my very own dollars to go see Madam Web, and if you have stumbled upon this video, it's because you're wondering if you should watch Madam Web. This film stars Dakota Johnson and was directed by S.J. Clarkson, who has directed episodes of The Defenders and also Jessica Jones. And I'm going to let you know my honest take on this movie with a score rating. But if you don't want any spoilers at all, you can look down below at the timestamp and go to that score rating, which will come later on in the video. Madam Web, which is about Cassie Webb, who is a New York Fire Department EMT. She has a close encounter with death when she plunges into what would appear to be maybe the Hudson, and she now begins to demonstrate the ability to be clairvoyant. She can see glimpses into the immediate future. At first, she cannot control this ability, and unfortunately, it leads to her being unable to save many around her. But as she dives in deeper, she witnesses the impending death of 3 young girls. She takes it upon herself to try and rescue them from a villainous figure from her own past that she isn't even aware of. And when she does that, she taps into a greater mystery. Dakota Johnson plays Cassie Webb, and this is really a superhero prequel birth of movie more than anything else. In fact, if you've seen the trailer, we get a chance to see the 3 girls in their spider person attires, and that is such a small part of the movie, and those are all moments that are in the future. I would say that this movie really felt as though it could have been a streaming movie. It was enjoyable enough on the big screen, but yeah, I could see where a lot of people would really get upset about this movie, given that they're used to Spider-Man movies being a bit flashier and the acting being a bit stronger. This kind of felt like something that should have been on streaming, and I actually think that if it was on streaming, it would have been better received, especially if it was serving as a prequel to a superhero television series with these 3 girls. I definitely would be here for that. As it is, Dakota Johnson isn't one of my favorite actresses. There's been some films that she's done a passably good job in, but one of the films that she most recently was in, Persuasion on Netflix, based on the Jane Austen novel, and is one of my favorite novels of that period, and it was not very good. In fact, I reviewed it, and I'll pin it up here below, above, so that you can check that out. But I just feel like Dakota's acting tends to be a bit wooden. Now, it actually works with how they characterize Cassie in this movie as someone who is very detached from emotions because she doesn't have a family. And so because of this, she really doesn't allow herself to be open up. Now, the caveat to that is that she has a really good friend in a character by the name of Ben, who we get to meet, and he seemingly is her bestie, her partner in crime, and they seem to get along well, someone who she can trust and who she depends on. So this whole notion of her not knowing how to love or how to take responsibility for people or how to be in relationships and things of that nature, it just seems a bit far-fetched when we take into consideration that she has this close relationship with Ben's character. But we see other moments where she's pretty closed off and where we're supposed to see her as this outcast. She goes to the baby shower of Ben's sister Mary, and at that baby shower, she certainly is much different than the women. She would have enjoyed her time spent more outside with the guys grilling hamburgers on the barbecue. And then along the way, and I'm not going to, I guess, tell you who Ben is, but you can put 2 and 2 together. It's not that hidden in the film. Definitely, they don't really shy away from that. She comes across these three girls at various intervals up until the point where they meet on the train, and she has a flash into them being attacked, and she tries to save them. These three girls are Sydney Sweeney, who's playing Julia Cornwall. You have Celeste O'Connor, who's playing Maddie Franklin, who has an uncle named Jonah. If you know the Spider lore, then I'm guessing that's going to be Jonah Jameson. And then you have Isabella Merced, who is playing Anya Corazon. And these three girls have all been shown or revealed to have important legacies in the Spider-Verse as spider persons, various spider people, and they are being tracked by Ezekiel Sims, who is the villain in this movie. Now, he is played by Tahar Rahim.
Be nice.
I'm finding it.
It take you that long to find it?
I am trying to find something nice to say about his acting in this movie, but it is horrible. The dialogue that he's given is bad, but his acting is so bad in this movie. It's so bad. And I'm not really familiar with him as an actor, so I don't know what else he's been in. He was in Napoleon. I haven't seen Napoleon yet. Yeah, I've not seen him in anything. His acting was atrocious. It was wooden. It was forced. He came across as like, you know that scene in The Incredibles where they're like mocking villains for like their superhero monologuing. That is this guy. Like, he's always telling you exactly why he's doing everything, but then there's also no real motivation for anything he's doing. It's just like, I was poor and I'm trying to be rich, so I'm going to do all this bad stuff because now I'm a bad person because I was poor. Like, that to me was probably the most atrocious part of the movie, so it has to drop down a letter grade just for the fact that the villain was so horrible. And in fact, I think that being that this villain was so horrible, everyone who critiqued the Marvels very harshly should add points back to their score for the Marvels, just on the strength of the fact that this villain was so bad, such a bad villain. The three girls are entertaining enough, and it felt like a better quality CW production when they were on screen, and so for that part of the movie, it was actually pretty enjoyable. Like, I liked the dynamic of the three girls together. I liked their chemistry. What's really, really odd is their ages. So with the exception of the actress who plays Anya, who's 22, Sydney Sweeney and Celeste O'Connor are both like 26 and 27, which is only 7 and 8 years younger than Dakota Johnson. And yet she's definitely giving like motherly vibes. And it's like, girl, maybe big sister. Like, come on, these are grown women. Of course, they're playing teens, and we could guess and say that they're probably around 16 in the movie. But yeah, we got to do better about like casting these actresses to be teenagers and they're not. And then like, but then Sydney Sweeney is in anyone but you. And she's an adult now. It's just like mind-boggling. I don't like it. I'm not a fan. But they were fine enough. The writing has gotten a lot of criticism because there is a lot of like repetitious, unnecessary dialogue where they've shown you something that's already happened and then they have to tell you or explain it when we just saw it played out and there was no need for them to explain it. One instance of this is where Dakota Johnson's character is teaching the girls how to perform CPR, and she's going through the steps and she's telling them how to perform CPR, which was a really good moment. Like, I could see like people taking their kids to see this and like them learning CPR from this movie. So hey, bonus points as a teacher for a teachable moment in film. But then later on, when they're actually having to use that technique to save someone, they're like, come on, don't give up, don't stop. And it's like, do they really need to be saying that in that moment? Like, why not say something else? Why not say, I got you? And then they just take over for each other. Like, it just felt like very forced. And there's a lot of moments like that in the film where the dialogue feels very forced. I felt like the first half of the film, the dialogue was much better than moments in the second half of the film. it lists just the action sequences. They weren't bad, but you're not getting a lot of superhero action sequences. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why critics are coming so hard on this movie, because they are being fed the idea that they went to go see a superhero movie, and it's really the birth of a superhero, and you don't see a lot of superhero-y antics except for the villain. So when you have a villain with superpowers and you have a character that is emerging superhero powers, it's like, would they really be able to defeat them? There needs to be more like ingenuity into how they defeat them. And I felt like they laid the groundwork for one of the characters actually being quite smart, and they didn't really use it as much. And in fact, it was like, oh, we're not going to do anything with this one character being kind of smart. Instead, we're just going to throw it back onto Cassie Webb's character to figure things out via her clairvoyance. So that was a bit of a letdown. Also, the timeline, and if you are a Marvel fanatic, I'm gonna need you to break this down to me as someone who loves Marvel, but definitely was more of an X-Men girly more than a Avengers girly or a Spider-Man girly. The film is set in 2003, hence the lovely, song selections such as Britney Spears' Toxic, or posters with Beyonce on them. Nice little touches and everything like that. But by the timeline of it all, right, the blip happens in the MCU timeline of 2018, which means that this is only 15 years. Now, if memory serves me correct, Peter was like around 16 or 17 when the blip occurred, not 15, because we met him when he was like 15. And then there's another sequence of events that happens, and then the blip occurs. And then he comes back, and then when we see him again at the end, and it's 5 years later, putting it around our time, he's about to graduate from high school. Keep that in mind, because if it's 2003, then if Peter is born in 2003, he would be 15 when the blip occurred, or turning 15. And so I just felt like that timeline didn't feel like that was correct, like we were at least a year or so off. Also, I don't know why we would be setting these spider people up to be a prequel to Peter, and then we don't see them at all in his time frame. So why would we not see them? Why would they not be around? Suddenly there's someone with similar spider ability to the villain you're fighting in this movie in 2018, and no one shows up and knocks on his door and says, hey, it's us. That was a bit of a letdown, especially because if this movie doesn't do well, I can't see them creating more versions of this. So will we ever get an explanation of that? I don't know. I don't know at all. So I really wish that they had instead set this at a different time period. I don't know. Of course, everything could work out if they are given the green light to create more around these characters. But I just feel as though there's a good opportunity that we're not going to get any answers to those questions. And so that leaves me a little bit disillusioned. Now, I will say that one character that I actually enjoyed in this movie was Adam Scott as Ben. I thought that was a nice little touch if you hadn't figured out who he was yet. His last name happens to be Parker. So there you go. Spoilers for that. But I didn't mind the action sequences. I really liked the use of Cassie's clairvoyance and her ability to see things and figure out that she can change time and change moments in time, and perhaps that is also causing a bit. Now if this was the MCU, I feel like these offshoots, these webs, would be a little bit of a TVA problem, but since we're not in the MCU, we're just in Sony, so we don't get to play around with those. But the Spider-Verse does exist in Sonyverse, so there is that. Which version of the universe are we in with these characters? The world may never know. I was in the theater with like 5 people. So it was me and 2 couples in the theater. I was by myself. I wasn't distracted. I wasn't on my phone a whole lot. So I will say that it did keep my interest in the way that like I spent my $8 on the movies, and so I wanted to see it play out, and I wasn't like disgusted, turned up my nose like I had just watched a Tubi movie for $8. Was it a bit of a disappointment? Yeah, sure. But I think, you know, people's hyperbole online to say this is the worst movie ever, even the Rotten Tomatoes score, does it have more negative than positive? I would say I really enjoyed the dynamic between the girls. There is a beginning, middle, and an end to the storyline. I do think that it works almost as a good prequel to perhaps a potential superhero story later down the line, but I think that the acting is really where things, the acting and the dialogue, not so much the story as on the plot, but the dialogue was really where things fall apart. Because I think that the actual plot worked and would have worked if the dialogue had been a bit better and if the acting had been better. So I would say that my overall score for this movie, I think on my immediate after movie reaction, I said I would give it a C or a C plus, but I'm actually going to drop that down to a C minus. So in that regards, it passes, but just barely. But let me know down below in the comments if you're planning to see Madam Web. Like I said, if you happen to live near a theater where you can buy tickets for less than $10, then I definitely would say it's not a complete waste of time. It wasn't enjoyable at moments. I didn't feel like I was ready to rip my hair out of my skull. So there's that. And if you're just looking for something to do and you're not like, I need everything in the timeline to be 100% correct, and I think you'll enjoy it more. But I think if you're a hardcore fan, you're going to hate the movie. So I would say enter at your own risk. All right. Hope you guys enjoyed this review. If you stuck through it through all this time, thank you so much for watching. Please do me a favor if you have and hit the subscribe button down below and give this video a thumbs up. And I will see you guys in the next one. Toodles.